I was unloading insulated tarps from my flatbed truck in my own driveway when this woman in a cream-colored cardigan and pearl necklace stormed across the street like she owned the entire neighborhood. "Excuse me, those industrial materials are absolutely not permitted in residential areas according to Section 17 of our HOA bylaws," she announced, clipboard already in hand before I even had a chance to set down the heavy tarp I was carrying. I turned around, wiping sweat from my forehead. It was a humid July afternoon in Naperville, Illinois, and I had just finished a 12-hour shift managing logistics for my freight company, Trans Secure Solutions. The last thing I needed was drama in my own driveway. "Hi, I'm Yannick Foster. I just moved in 2 weeks ago," I said, trying to be polite despite my exhaustion. "These are just some equipment tarps I need to store temporarily. They'll be in my garage by tonight." The woman's eyes narrowed. "I'm Patricia Hendricks, HOA president of Meadowbrook Estates." Temporarily is not good enough. These eyesores need to be removed immediately. They're bringing down property values just sitting there in plain sight. I looked at the tarps. They were neatly folded, high-grade insulated covers that we used to protect sensitive freight during transport. Each one cost around $300. They weren't exactly trash bags scattered across my lawn. "Madam, they're just tarps. I run a freight and logistics company. Sometimes I need to bring equipment home to organize inventory. They'll be gone in a few hours." Patricia's face flushed red. "A freight company? You're running a commercial business from a residential property. That's a direct violation of Section 12, subsection 4. I'm issuing you an immediate citation and a $500 fine." She started scribbling on her clipboard before I could even respond. I felt my jaw tighten. I had dealt with difficult clients before, but this was something else entirely. "Hold on. I'm not running my business from home. I just store some personal equipment here. My actual business operates out of a warehouse in Aurora. This is completely legal." Patricia looked up from her clipboard with a condescending smile. "The HOA bylaws supersede what you consider legal, Mr. Foster. You signed the agreement when you purchased this property. Every homeowner in Meadowbrook Estates is bound by our rules, and I enforce them equally and fairly." I doubted that very much, but I was too tired to argue. "Fine. I'll move them right now. See that you do, and Mr. Foster, I'll be watching your property closely from now on. We maintain certain standards in this neighborhood, and I won't have them compromised by someone who thinks industrial work belongs in a residential community." She walked away with her head held high, leaving me standing in my driveway holding a tarp and questioning every life decision that led me to buying a house in an HOA neighborhood. My real estate agent had mentioned the HOA, but she made it sound like they just organized the occasional block party and made sure people mowed their lawns. She definitely didn't mention Patricia Hendricks. I spent the next hour hauling the tarps into my garage, reorganizing everything to make them fit. My garage was already packed with moving boxes I hadn't unpacked yet, and now it was completely unusable. I texted my business partner, Marcus Chen, about what happened. "Welcome to HOA life, man," he texted back. "My sister dealt with the same nonsense in her neighborhood. These people have nothing better to do than harass their neighbors." That evening I was sitting on my back porch with a beer when my next-door neighbor, an older guy probably in his 60s, leaned over the fence. "I see you met Patricia," he said with a knowing grin. "That obvious?" I asked. "She has that effect on people. I'm Gerald, by the way. Gerald Matthews. Been living here for 15 years, suffered through 8 of them with Patricia as HOA president. Yannick Foster. And yeah, she seems like a real piece of work." Gerald chuckled. "That's putting it mildly." She's fined me for having my garbage cans visible from the street, for painting my front door the wrong shade of blue, and for having a garden gnome that was apparently too whimsical for neighborhood standards. The woman has made it her life's mission to make everyone as miserable as she is. Why doesn't anyone vote her out? We've tried. 3 times. But she runs unopposed because nobody else wants to deal with the paperwork and the monthly meetings. Plus, she's got a few loyal followers who think she's protecting property values. Mostly people who moved here in the last few years and haven't figured out what she's really like yet. I took a long drink of my beer. Well, hopefully she'll leave me alone now that I moved the tarps. Gerald gave me a sympathetic look. I wouldn't count on it. Once Patricia has you on her radar, you stay there. Good luck, neighbor. The next morning, I woke up to my doorbell ringing at 7 in the morning. I stumbled downstairs in my pajama pants to find Patricia standing on my porch with her clipboard again, along with another woman who looked to be in her 40s. Mr. Foster, this is Denise Morrison, HOA treasurer. We need to discuss your landscaping. I looked past them at my front yard. It was a standard lawn with some bushes and a small tree. Nothing special, but nothing terrible either. What about it? Patricia pointed at my grass. It's 3.5 inches tall. The maximum permitted height is 3 inches. Additionally, your hedges are overgrown and your mailbox has a small dent in it. These violations need to be corrected within 48 hours or you'll face additional fines. I stared at her, trying to determine if she was serious. She was completely serious. My grass is 1/2 inch too tall. 3.5 inches is the current height. The maximum is 3 inches. That's a 16% violation of the standard. Denise looked uncomfortable but said nothing. She just stood there holding a folder, clearly used to Patricia's antics. I'll mow my lawn this weekend, I said, trying to keep my voice even. This weekend is not within the 48-hour compliance window. The lawn needs to be mowed by Wednesday evening at the latest. I work 12-hour shifts Monday through Wednesday. I'll mow it when I have time. Patricia made another note on her clipboard. Failure to comply will result in a $200 fine, and the HOA will hire a landscaping service to correct the violation at your expense, which typically costs around $300. I'd recommend finding the time, Mr. Foster. She turned and walked away, Denise scurrying behind her like an uncomfortable shadow. I went back inside and called in a favor with a lawn service I used for my business property. They agreed to come out that afternoon for a rush job. It cost me $80 for something I could have done myself for free if I'd had a few extra hours. The harassment continued over the next 2 weeks. Patricia cited me for parking my work truck in my driveway overnight, even though there was nothing in the bylaws about commercial vehicles. When I pointed this out, she called an emergency HOA board meeting, and they drafted a new rule prohibiting commercial vehicles from being parked in driveways between sunset and sunrise. The new rule was voted on and passed by the 3-person board, Patricia, Denise, and a man named Robert Sullivan, who I later learned was Patricia's cousin. I started parking my truck on the street, which was public property and outside HOA jurisdiction. Patricia then complained to the village about my truck being an eyesore. The village sent someone out, determined the truck was legally parked and properly registered, and told Patricia there was nothing they could do. She wasn't happy about that. Meanwhile, my business was going through one of our busiest periods ever. We had landed a massive contract with a European appliance manufacturer to handle the import and distribution of their high-end refrigerators, dishwashers, and washing machines throughout the Midwest. These weren't your standard appliances. We were talking about units that cost anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000 each. The manufacturer, A German company called Eisenbach Industries required white glove service, climate-controlled transport, and specialized protective equipment for every shipment. That's where my insulated tarps came in. These weren't ordinary tarps. They were custom-designed, temperature-regulating covers that protected sensitive electronics and prevented condensation damage during transport. We had invested over $50,000 in acquiring enough of them to handle the Eisenbach contract. Marcus and I spent weeks coordinating the logistics. The appliances were shipping from Hamburg to the port of Chicago, then being transported by our trucks to a climate-controlled warehouse in Aurora, where they'd be distributed to high-end retailers and luxury home builders across Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, and Iowa. It was the biggest contract we'd ever landed, and everything had to be perfect. The first shipment arrives next week, Marcus told me during a meeting at our warehouse. 18 pallets of their premium line. If we nail this, Eisenbach said they'll give us their entire Midwest distribution contract. We're talking about a potential $5 million annual account. I reviewed the delivery schedules and inspection protocols. Everything was planned down to the minute. We had hired 2 additional drivers and rented extra warehouse space. This contract could take secure solutions from a solid local company to a major regional player. That Friday evening, I got home around 8 o'clock to find a notice taped to my front door. Another HOA violation. This time, Patricia was citing me for having a wreath on my door that wasn't pre-approved by the Architectural Review Committee. The wreath was a simple evergreen circle my sister had sent me as a housewarming gift. I hadn't even thought about needing approval to hang a wreath on my own front door. I crumpled up the notice and tossed it in the recycling bin. I was done playing Patricia's games. She could find me, cite me, and harass me all she wanted. I had bigger things to worry about than her petty power trips. The following Tuesday, our first major Eisenbach shipment arrived at the port of Chicago. Marcus and I were there at 6 in the morning to oversee the transfer. The shipping container was opened, and we inspected each pallet carefully. Everything looked perfect. The appliances were packed exactly according to specifications, with all the original German packaging and documentation intact. "Beautiful," Marcus said, checking off items on his tablet. "Let's get these loaded and transported. I want them in our warehouse by noon." We had 3 trucks ready. Each appliance was carefully wrapped in our specialized insulated tarps before being loaded. The tarps regulated temperature, prevented scratches, and protected against any potential moisture exposure. They were essential to maintaining the factory-fresh condition that Eisenbach and their customers demanded. The transport went flawlessly. By 1 o'clock, all 18 pallets were secured in our climate-controlled warehouse, and I sent the confirmation to our Eisenbach contact in Germany. They responded within an hour, complimenting our efficiency and professionalism. I drove home that evening feeling better than I had in weeks. The business was thriving, and despite Patricia's constant harassment, I was making it work. I pulled into my driveway and noticed Gerald outside watering his plants. "Hey, Yannick, you look like you're in a good mood for once," he called out. "Had a great day at work. Sometimes things just go right, you know. That's good to hear." "You deserve a break after all the garbage Patricia's been putting you through. Speaking of which, did you see her new car?" "No. Why?" Gerald gestured down the street. "Take a look. Parked right in front of her house. Brand new luxury SUV. She's been bragging about it all week. German-made, apparently. Cost her over $80,000. I looked down the street and saw a gleaming white Mercedes SUV parked in front of a large colonial-style house. Patricia's house, presumably. Good for her, I guess, I said, though I didn't really mean it. Yeah, well, some of us are wondering where she got that kind of money. She works part-time at a dental office. Her husband's a middle manager at an insurance company. Not exactly Mercedes SUV money, you know what I mean, I shrugged. People's finances were their own business, and I didn't care enough about Patricia to wonder about her spending habits. I went inside, made dinner, and spent the evening reviewing the next week's delivery schedule. Thursday morning, I was at the warehouse doing inventory when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize with a local area code. "This is Yannick," I answered. "Mr. Foster, this is Sharon Reeves from Eisenbach Industries' North American Division. I'm calling about your upcoming delivery to one of our retail partners in Naperville." "Yes, I have that scheduled for Monday. Is there a problem?" "Not a problem exactly. The delivery address is in a residential area, which isn't typical for our retail partnerships. I just wanted to confirm it's correct. The address is 847 Meadowbrook Lane, Naperville." My hand froze. "Can you repeat that address?" 847 Meadowbrook Lane. It's registered to a Patricia Hendricks. She's one of our luxury home program customers. Apparently, she's renovating her kitchen and ordered our complete premium line. Refrigerator, dishwasher, wall ovens, the works. Total value is around $75,000. I felt a smile spreading across my face as the irony of the situation hit me. "No, the address is correct. We'll have everything delivered and installed according to schedule. Thank you for confirming, Miss Reeves." After I hung up, Marcus walked over. "What's got you grinning like that?" I explained the situation. The HOA president, who had been harassing me for weeks about my insulated tarps, didn't realize that my company, the one she was so opposed to operating in her neighborhood, was responsible for protecting and delivering the $75,000 worth of German appliances she had ordered for her kitchen renovation. Marcus started laughing. "Oh man, that's perfect. Are you going to tell her?" "Not yet. I want to handle this professionally. We'll deliver her appliances, do the installation, and provide the same excellent service we give every customer. But maybe, just maybe, she'll realize that my insulated tarps and my freight company aren't the neighborhood menace she made them out to be." Over the weekend, I prepared for Monday's delivery. Patricia's appliances required special care. The refrigerator alone weighed over 400 pounds and needed to be transported in a climate-controlled truck, wrapped in our best insulated tarps, and installed by certified technicians who had completed Eisenbach's training program. I had gone through that training myself specifically for this contract. Monday morning arrived. I pulled up to the warehouse at 5 to find our installation team already loading the truck. The appliances gleamed under the warehouse lights, each one wrapped carefully in the insulated tarps that Patricia had called eyesores just a few weeks ago. "Everything ready?" I asked Tommy Rodriguez, my lead installation technician. "All set, boss. These are beautiful machines. Whoever's getting them is one lucky customer." "Oh, you have no idea," I said. I decided to go on the delivery myself. Marcus thought I was being petty, and maybe I was a little, but I wanted to see Patricia's face when she realized who was delivering her precious German appliances. We arrived at 847 Meadowbrook Lane at exactly 9 o'clock, as scheduled. Patricia's Mercedes was in the driveway, and I could see contractors' trucks parked on the street. Her kitchen renovation was apparently in full swing. I rang the doorbell. Patricia answered, wearing paint-splattered jeans and a t-shirt, her hair tied back in a ponytail. For a second, she didn't recognize me without my work uniform. "Can I help you?" she asked. "Good morning, Mrs. Hendricks. I'm with Trans Secure Solutions." We're here to deliver and install your Eisenbach appliances. Recognition dawned in her eyes, followed immediately by confusion and then something that looked like panic. You're the freight company. Yes, madam. We have your complete premium line order. Refrigerator, dishwasher, 2 wall ovens and a wine cooler. Everything's been climate controlled and protected during transport. If you could show us where you'd like them installed, we'll get started. Patricia stood there speechless for a moment. I could see her brain working, trying to figure out how this had happened. Behind her, a contractor walked up. The Eisenbach delivery, the contractor asked. Great, we're ready for them. I'm Dave, the general contractor handling the renovation. You must be trans secure. That's us, I said. Let's take a look at the space. Patricia had no choice but to let us in. Her kitchen was completely gutted, with new cabinets partially installed and contractors working on electrical and plumbing. It was a high-end renovation, probably costing well over $100,000 total. The refrigerator goes in that space, Dave said, pointing to a gap between 2 cabinet sections. Ovens in the wall there, dishwasher next to the sink. Pretty straightforward install. Tommy and our other technician, James Webb, started bringing in the appliances. Each one was carefully unwrapped from the insulated tarps and positioned in the staging area. Patricia watched in silence, her expression unreadable. The installation took 3 hours. We had to make some minor adjustments to the cabinet spacing for the refrigerator, but otherwise everything went smoothly. The appliances were absolutely stunning once installed. The refrigerator had a brushed stainless finish with a touch-screen panel. The ovens were restaurant quality. The whole setup looked like something from a luxury home magazine. Okay, Mrs. Hendricks, let me walk you through everything, I said once we were finished. This is your refrigerator's control panel. You can adjust temperature zones here, activate the air purification system here, and monitor energy usage here. The ice maker has 3 settings for cube size. The water filter needs to be replaced every 6 months, and we'll send you reminders. I went through each appliance methodically, explaining features and maintenance requirements. Patricia followed along, asking questions when necessary, but she seemed uncomfortable the entire time. The contractor, Dave, was impressed. This is top-notch service, he told me. I've worked with a lot of appliance delivery companies, and most of them just drop stuff off and leave. You guys actually care about doing it right. That's what we're here for, I said. Mrs. Hendricks, you have our 24-hour service number if any issues come up. Eisenbach also offers a warranty program that we administer locally. All the documentation is in this folder. I handed her a professional folder with all the paperwork, warranty information, and maintenance schedules. She took it without making eye contact. Thank you, she said quietly. One more thing, I added. Those insulated tarps you saw in my driveway a few weeks ago, those are what we use to protect your appliances during transport from the port. They regulate temperature and prevent any moisture damage or scratches. Every one of your appliances was wrapped in them for the entire journey. They're essential equipment for high-value freight like this. Patricia's face flushed red. She finally looked at me directly. I see. We take protecting our customers' investments very seriously. That's why Trans Secure Solutions was chosen by Eisenbach to handle their entire Midwest distribution. They trust us with millions of dollars worth of merchandise because they know we have the right equipment and expertise. I wasn't trying to rub it in. Well, maybe a little. But mostly I wanted her to understand that her snap judgments about my business had been completely wrong. Dave, the contractor, looked confused. Do you two know each other? Mr. Foster lives in the neighborhood, Patricia said stiffly. And he's also the HOA member I've been citing for various violations. Dave's eyebrows went up and he glanced between us. "Oh, well, that's awkward." "Not at all," I said. "Mrs. Hendricks is entitled to enforce HOA rules as she sees fit. And I'm required to provide excellent service to every customer, regardless of our personal interactions. That's just professionalism." I had Tommy and James load the tarps back into the truck, and we prepared to leave. As I was walking out, Patricia followed me to the front door. "Mr. Foster, can we talk for a moment?" I turned around. She looked genuinely uncomfortable, which was a first, of course. "I may have been overly harsh when you first moved in. I take my responsibilities as HOA president seriously, perhaps too seriously sometimes. I didn't realize the nature of your business or how professional your operation is." It was the closest thing to an apology I was likely to get from Patricia Hendricks. "I appreciate that," I said. "And I understand wanting to maintain neighborhood standards. But maybe we could both be a little more understanding going forward. I'll do my best to comply with reasonable HOA guidelines, and perhaps you could give people the benefit of the doubt before immediately issuing citations." Patricia nodded. "That seems fair. And Mr. Foster, thank you for the excellent service today. The appliances are beautiful and your team was very professional. Just doing our job. Enjoy your new kitchen." I drove back to the warehouse feeling satisfied. The delivery had gone perfectly, and Patricia had at least acknowledged that she'd been wrong about me. Maybe things would calm down now. They didn't. 2 days later, I got home to find another HOA notice on my door. This one cited me for having mud on my truck's tires, which had apparently left marks on the street when I parked. The fine was $100. I called Patricia immediately. "What happened to giving people the benefit of the doubt? This is a legitimate violation, Mr. Foster. Your vehicle left mud on a public street within the HOA's jurisdiction. That's a cleanliness violation. It rained yesterday. Every vehicle had mud on its tires. Are you fining everyone or just me? I'm enforcing the rules as they're written." I hung up, frustrated beyond belief. Her attitude after the appliance delivery had apparently been temporary. She was back to her usual self, finding any possible reason to harass me. The following week brought more citations. My trash cans were 2 inches outside the designated storage area. My lawn had a single dandelion. My house number needed to be repainted because it was fading. Every violation came with a fine ranging from $50 to $200. I wasn't the only one suffering. Gerald told me that Patricia had ramped up enforcement across the entire neighborhood. She was apparently on some kind of power trip, fining people for the smallest infractions and calling emergency HOA meetings to create new rules. She cited Mrs. Wilson for having a flag that was the wrong size, Gerald said one evening. "Mrs. Wilson is 90 years old and the flag was her late husband's military burial flag. Patricia made her take it down because it exceeded the maximum square footage for decorative items. That's insane. Can't someone file a complaint against her? With who? She's the HOA president. The only way to get rid of her is to vote her out, and nobody wants to run against her because she makes their life hell if they try." I went home that night and read through the entire HOA bylaws document, all 47 pages of it. It was a nightmare of petty regulations and contradictory rules. But buried in Section 32, I found something interesting. HOA board members could be recalled by a petition signed by 25% of homeowners, followed by a special election. Meadowbrook Estates had 84 homes, which meant I needed 21 signatures. I started talking to neighbors. Most people were afraid to sign, worried about Patricia retaliating with citations and fines, but a few were angry enough to take the risk. Gerald signed immediately. The Wilsons signed. A young couple named the Ramirez family signed. Over the next 2 weeks, I collected 18 signatures. I needed 3 more. Then everything changed in a way I never expected. It was a Thursday morning when I got a call from Sharon Reeves at Eisenbach again. "Mr. Foster, we have a serious problem. One of our customers is claiming their appliances were damaged during delivery and installation. They're demanding a full refund and threatening legal action." My stomach dropped. "Which customer?" "Patricia Hendricks in Naperville. She's saying the refrigerator has a dent, the dishwasher is leaking, and the ovens aren't heating properly. She's claiming negligent installation and wants $75,000 back, plus additional damages for the disruption to her renovation." "That's impossible. We inspected every appliance before and after installation. Everything was perfect. I was there personally. She's hired a lawyer and sent us a formal demand letter. She's also filed a complaint with the Better Business Bureau and posted negative reviews online claiming your company damaged her property. Eisenbach is taking this very seriously. If we can't resolve it, they're considering terminating our contract." I felt rage building in my chest. Patricia was trying to destroy my business because she was angry that I was gathering signatures to recall her as HOA president. I didn't know how she found out about the petition, but somehow she had, and this was her revenge. "I need to see the appliances. Can you send me photos of the alleged damage? She's refusing to allow anyone from your company back on her property. She claims she doesn't trust Trans Secure Solutions after the negligent installation. Then send an independent inspector, someone from Eisenbach directly." "We did nothing wrong and I can prove it." Sharon hesitated. "I'll talk to my supervisor, but Yannick, between you and me, this looks bad. The customer seems credible and her documentation is very detailed. If Eisenbach determines this was our fault, we'll lose the contract and possibly face a lawsuit." I hung up and immediately called Marcus. "We have a major problem." I explained the situation. Marcus was furious. "She's lying. I've seen the installation photos. Everything was perfect." "I know, but she's got a lawyer and she's making a formal claim. This could destroy us." We spent the rest of the day gathering documentation. I pulled up all the photos we'd taken during installation. Every appliance had been photographed from multiple angles before installation, during installation, and after installation. Everything was pristine. We also had the inspection reports from when we first received the appliances at our warehouse. No damage. I compiled everything into a detailed report and sent it to Sharon at Eisenbach. Then I called a lawyer friend of mine, Daniel Park, who handled business disputes. "This sounds like retaliation," Daniel said after I explained the situation. "If you can prove she's filing false claims because of the HOA petition, you might have grounds for a countersuit. I just want to protect my business. The Eisenbach contract is our biggest account. If we lose it, we might have to lay off employees. Let me make some calls. In the meantime, don't contact Patricia directly. Everything needs to go through lawyers from now on." The next 2 weeks were a nightmare. Eisenbach sent an independent inspector to evaluate Patricia's appliances. She had, conveniently, allowed the inspector access even though she'd refused to let anyone from my company back on her property. The inspector's report was damning. The refrigerator had a significant dent on the side panel. The dishwasher was indeed leaking from a loose connection. One of the ovens wasn't heating to the correct temperature. I reviewed the report with Marcus and Tommy, our installation tech. "This doesn't make sense," Tommy said. "I personally connected that dishwasher. The connection was tight, and I tested both ovens. They were working perfectly." Could the damage have happened after we left? I asked. The dent, maybe, but the dishwasher leak and the oven issue. Those would have been obvious during our final inspection. We test everything before we leave. Marcus pulled up our installation photos on his laptop. Look at this. This photo shows the side of the refrigerator where the inspector claims there's a dent. It's pristine. No damage at all. He was right. The photo clearly showed the refrigerator side panel without any dent. It was taken after installation, time stamped at 12:43 p.m. on the day of delivery. She damaged it herself, I said slowly. After we left, she's committing fraud. Daniel Park agreed when I showed him the evidence. This is insurance fraud and filing a false claim with intent to damage your business. Both are criminal offenses in Illinois, but proving intent is difficult. She could claim the damage happened during installation, and she just didn't notice it right away. What about the photos? They clearly show no damage after installation. They help, but she'll argue the angle doesn't show the damaged area or something similar. You need more concrete evidence. I thought about it for a few days. Then I had an idea. Dave, the contractor who was managing Patricia's renovation, had been there during the installation. I called him. Dave, this is Yannick Foster from Trans Secure Solutions. We delivered appliances to your job site a few weeks ago. Yeah, I remember. What's up? The homeowner is claiming we damaged her appliances during installation. I know this is awkward, but you were there. Did you notice any damage when we were doing the install? There was a long pause. No, actually. Everything looked perfect. She even commented on how good it all looked after you guys left. Would you be willing to provide a statement to that effect? She's threatening to sue my company and I'm trying to protect my business. Another pause. Look, man, I don't want to get in the middle of a dispute. Patricia is my client and I have to maintain that relationship. I understand, but I'm asking you to tell the truth about what you saw, that's all. Let me think about it. I'll call you back. He never called back. I tried reaching him twice more, but he didn't answer or return my messages. Patricia had probably gotten to him, either threatening him or offering him something to stay quiet. Meanwhile, the HOA harassment continued. Patricia issued me citations for having my living room curtains open too wide, which apparently violated the neighborhood's aesthetic standards. She cited me for receiving a package delivery on a Sunday, claiming commercial activity wasn't permitted on weekends. The fines were piling up, totaling over $3,000 at this point. I hadn't paid a single one. In late September, I received a formal letter from the HOA's lawyer stating that I was in violation of multiple bylaws and owed $3,450 in fines. If I didn't pay within 30 days, they would place a lien on my property. The same day, Eisenbach sent me a letter terminating our contract effective immediately. They were refunding Patricia's full purchase price and covering the cost of removing the appliances from her home. They also stated that, due to the service failure, they would be seeking a more reliable distribution partner for the Midwest region. I sat in my living room holding both letters, feeling everything I'd worked for slipping away. Marcus and I had built Trans Secure Solutions from nothing over the past 8 years. We'd scraped together our savings, taken out loans, worked 18-hour days. The Eisenbach contract was supposed to be our big break, the account that would finally put us on solid financial footing. And Patricia Hendricks had destroyed it with lies and fraud, all because I dared to challenge her authority as HOA president. My phone rang. It was Daniel Park. Yannick, I think I found something. Do you know a woman named Olivia Graham? No, should I? She used to live in your neighborhood. Moved out about 6 months ago. I was researching Patricia Hendricks and found some interesting court records. Olivia filed a lawsuit against the HOA 3 years ago for harassment. The case was settled out of court, but I managed to get in touch with her. She's willing to talk to you. I met Olivia at a coffee shop in downtown Naperville the next morning. She was in her early 30s, a former resident of Meadowbrook Estates who looked exhausted just talking about her experience there. Patricia made my life hell for 2 years, Olivia said, stirring her latte. It started when I painted my front door red. She said it violated the color palette guidelines. I showed her that red was actually on the approved list, but she claimed it was the wrong shade of red. She fined me $500. When I refused to pay, she had the HOA's lawyer threaten me with a lien. That sounds familiar, I said. It got worse. She started finding violations everywhere. My garden was too tall. My mailbox wasn't the right style. My car was parked 6 inches over the property line. Every week there was something new. Finally, I discovered what was really going on. What do you mean? Olivia pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. It was a document, some kind of financial statement. The HOA is required to file annual financial reports with the state. I requested them under the Freedom of Information Act. Look at this line item. $50,000 in revenue from violation fines over a single year. I looked closer. The report showed that HOA dues brought in about $70,000 annually from 84 homes. But fines and penalties brought in an additional $50,000. The HOA is funding itself through excessive fines, Olivia explained. Patricia isn't just on a power trip. She's running a racket. The more violations she can cite, the more money the HOA brings in. And guess who controls how that money gets spent? The HOA president. That's fraud, I said. Maybe, maybe not. The bylaws technically allow the fines, but the way she enforces them is selective and excessive. I filed a lawsuit claiming harassment and improper enforcement. The HOA's insurance company convinced them to settle rather than go to trial. They paid me $20,000, and I agreed to move out of the neighborhood and sign an NDA. But you're talking to me now. Olivia smiled. The NDA prevents me from making public statements about the settlement. It doesn't prevent me from discussing factual information about HOA financial records, which are public documents. And it doesn't prevent me from providing truthful testimony if subpoenaed in a legal proceeding. I felt hope stirring for the first time in weeks. Would you be willing to testify if I pursue legal action against Patricia? Absolutely. She needs to be stopped. After I left, I heard she's gotten even worse. I still have friends in the neighborhood who tell me stories. She's turned the HOA into her personal fiefdom, and nobody can stop her because she's rigged the system. I thanked Olivia and immediately called Daniel. I think we have grounds for a lawsuit. Patricia is operating a scheme to generate excessive fines. The appliance fraud is part of a larger pattern of harassment and retaliation. That's good, but we still need to prove the appliances were intentionally damaged, Daniel said. Your photos help, but we need something definitive. I thought about it. Then I remembered something Tommy had mentioned during the installation. We installed a smart diagnostic system on her refrigerator. It tracks temperature, door openings, error codes, everything. The data is transmitted to Eisenbach servers for warranty purposes. Can you access that data? I can request it through Sharon at Eisenbach. If Patricia damaged the refrigerator after we left, there might be error codes or diagnostic information that proves it. I called Sharon. She was hesitant given our terminated contract, but I explained what I was looking for and why. She agreed to request the diagnostic data from the IT department. 3 days later, she called me back. Yannick, you were right. The refrigerator's diagnostic system recorded an impact event on the right side panel at 3:17 p.m. on the day of installation. That was over 2 hours after your team left. The system logged it as a significant impact with a force measurement that indicates someone deliberately hit it with something heavy. Can you send me that data? I'm sending it now. And Yannick, I owe you an apology. I should have trusted your documentation from the beginning. I'm going to recommend to my supervisor that we review the contract termination. You clearly didn't damage the appliances. The diagnostic data was damning. It showed the exact time the refrigerator was impacted, the force measurement, and even the location of the impact matching the dent's position. There was no way it happened during our installation. Daniel reviewed the data with an expert witness, a mechanical engineer who specialized in appliance damage analysis. His opinion was clear. The damage was intentionally inflicted after installation, likely with a hammer or similar tool. We've got her, Daniel said. This is fraud, filing a false insurance claim and probably a few other charges. I'm going to contact the state's attorney's office. This is criminal. What about my business? The damage she's already caused. We'll file a civil lawsuit for defamation, tortious interference with business relationships, and fraud. You can seek damages for the lost contract, your reputation, and punitive damages for the intentional nature of her actions. Things moved quickly after that. Daniel sent a formal demand letter to Patricia outlining our evidence and giving her an opportunity to retract her claims and compensate Trans Secure Solutions for damages. She refused and doubled down, claiming our evidence was fabricated. That was a mistake. Daniel forwarded everything to the state's attorney's office in DuPage County. They opened an investigation into insurance fraud. They also looked into the HOA's financial records based on the information Olivia had provided. 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning in mid-October, I was at my warehouse when Marcus came running in. Turn on the local news, right now. I pulled up a news stream on my phone. A reporter was standing outside Patricia's house. The caption read, HOA president arrested for fraud. Patricia Hendricks, president of the Meadowbrook Estates Homeowners Association, was arrested this morning on charges of insurance fraud, filing a false police report, and theft. According to prosecutors, Hendricks allegedly damaged her own appliances and blamed a local freight company to avoid payment, then filed fraudulent insurance claims seeking reimbursement. The investigation also uncovered evidence of financial improprieties within the HOA itself. Hendricks is being held on $50,000 bond. I watched in stunned silence as police officers led Patricia out of her house in handcuffs. She looked smaller somehow, less intimidating without her clipboard and pearl necklace. My phone rang. It was Gerald from next door. Did you see the news? Patricia got arrested. I'm watching it right now. There's more. The county prosecutor's office is investigating the HOA's finances. Apparently, Patricia was funneling money from the fine revenue into personal accounts. They think she might have embezzled over $100,000 over the past 5 years. The full scope of Patricia's scheme came out over the following days. She had been systematically violating the HOA's financial protocols, creating excessive fines, and diverting the money to accounts she controlled. The expensive Mercedes SUV, the $75,000 appliance order, a vacation home in Florida. All funded by money she'd essentially stolen from the neighborhood through fraudulent fines and kickbacks from contractors. The HOA's treasurer, Denise, cooperated fully with investigators and received immunity in exchange for her testimony. She admitted that Patricia had pressured her to approve questionable expenses and look the other way on financial irregularities. Robert Sullivan, the third board member and Patricia's cousin, was also under investigation for his role in the scheme. Eisenbach Industries contacted me personally to apologize and reinstate our contract. They also agreed to cover my legal expenses as an apology for terminating our agreement without fully investigating Patricia's claims. The Midwest distribution contract was back on, with an expanded scope. In November, Patricia pleaded guilty to insurance fraud, theft, and filing false reports. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison, ordered to pay full restitution to the HOA and to Trans Secure Solutions, and permanently banned from serving on any homeowners association board in Illinois. The civil lawsuit was settled out of court. Between Patricia's assets, the HOA's insurance policy, and contributions from Robert Sullivan to avoid criminal charges himself, Trans Secure Solutions received $450,000 in damages. It was more than enough to cover our losses and helped us expand our business significantly. The HOA held emergency elections for a new board. Gerald ran for president and won easily. One of his first acts was to review and eliminate the most egregious bylaws Patricia had implemented. The grass height requirement was relaxed to a reasonable 4 inches. Commercial vehicles were allowed with reasonable restrictions. Most importantly, all fines over $50 had to be approved by a majority of the board, not just the president. I finally paid off the remaining legitimate fines I'd accumulated, which under the new board's review amounted to about $300. Gerald personally apologized for not standing up to Patricia sooner. "A lot of us knew she was out of control," he told me over beers on his back porch one evening. "But we were all too scared or too apathetic to do anything about it. You stood up to her, and that's what finally brought her down. The neighborhood owes you one." "I was just trying to run my business and live my life," I said. "I didn't set out to take down the HOA president." Sometimes that's all it takes, one person refusing to back down from a bully. By December, life in Meadowbrook Estates had improved dramatically. The new HOA board was reasonable and focused on actual community improvement rather than petty enforcement. We organized a real block party, not the formal affairs Patricia had insisted on, but an actual fun gathering with a grill and music and neighbors getting to know each other. Dave, the contractor who had worked on Patricia's house, approached me at the block party. "Hey, Yannick, I owe you an apology. I should have backed you up when you asked about the appliances. I knew something wasn't right, but I was afraid of losing the job." "It worked out," I said. "Patricia actually tried to get me to lie for her, said she'd give me bonus work if I testified that your installation was sloppy. I refused, but I should have told you. I'm sorry." "Water under the bridge," I said, and I meant it. Trans Secure Solutions ended the year stronger than ever. The Eisenbach contract led to other opportunities. We added 4 more employees and leased a larger warehouse facility. Marcus and I even started looking at expanding into Ohio and Michigan. In January, I was working in my garage, organizing equipment for the new year, when I realized I had several of our insulated tarps folded on the garage floor. They were the same tarps Patricia had complained about nearly 6 months ago, the ones she'd called eyesores and violations of neighborhood standards. I carried them out to my driveway and laid them out to air them out after being stored. As I was working, a car pulled up. It was a family I'd seen around the neighborhood but never formally met. A woman got out and walked over. "Excuse me, are you the owner of Trans Secure Solutions?" Here we go again, I thought. "Yes, madam. Is there a problem?" "Not at all. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Susan Fletcher." My husband and I are building a new house in Plainfield, and we need to have some very expensive audiovisual equipment transported and installed. We heard about how professionally you handled a situation in this neighborhood, and several people recommended your company. Would you have time to give us a quote? I smiled, looking down at the insulated tarps spread across my driveway, the same ones that had started this entire ordeal. Absolutely. Let me get your contact information, and I'll have my partner reach out to discuss your needs. As Susan drove away, Gerald walked over from his yard. That's the third person this month who's asked about your services because of what happened with Patricia. You're becoming famous around here. Infamous is more like it, I said. No, seriously. People respect what you did. You stood up for yourself, ran your business professionally even when Patricia was attacking you, and you had the integrity to deliver excellent service to someone who was harassing you. That says a lot about character. I thought about everything that had happened over the past 7 months. Moving into a new neighborhood, being harassed by an overzealous HOA president, discovering her fraud, and ultimately seeing justice served. It had been exhausting and stressful, but in the end, things had worked out better than I could have hoped. You want to know the crazy part? I said to Gerald, if Patricia had just left me alone from the beginning, none of this would have happened. She'd still be HOA president, still embezzling money, still making everyone miserable. But she couldn't help herself. She had to target me over some tarps in my driveway. Pride comes before the fall, Gerald said. Shakespeare or something. Close enough. I finished organizing my equipment and went inside. My phone buzzed with an email from Sharon at Eisenbach. They had another major shipment coming in next month and wanted to confirm our availability. Business was good. The neighborhood was peaceful. Life was finally settling into a comfortable routine. That evening, I sat on my back porch watching the sun set over the subdivision. The houses around me were lit warmly from within, families going about their evening routines. It was the kind of peaceful suburban scene I'd imagined when I decided to buy a house here. The irony wasn't lost on me. Patricia had spent years creating conflict and misery in pursuit of control and money, and in the end, she'd lost everything. Her freedom, her reputation, her position, her assets. All because she couldn't let people live their lives in peace. Meanwhile, I'd gained more than I'd lost. A successful business, respect from my neighbors, and a genuine sense of community that Patricia's authoritarian rule had prevented from forming. The new HOA board under Gerald's leadership was actually bringing people together instead of dividing them. My phone rang. It was Marcus. Hey, boss. I just locked down that Ohio expansion deal. We're officially going regional. That's fantastic. When do we start? First shipments in March. We'll need to hire at least 6 more people and lease warehouse space in Columbus. This is really happening, man. After we hung up, I poured myself a bourbon and raised the glass toward Patricia's house down the street. The house was dark now, put up for sale to help pay her restitution. A moving truck had cleared out most of her belongings last week. Thanks for the motivation, Patricia, I said quietly. Couldn't have done it without you. A breeze rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of early spring. In a few weeks, people would start working on their lawns and gardens, preparing for summer. Kids would ride bikes through the streets. Neighbors would wave to each other without fear of citations and fines. Meadowbrook Estates was becoming what it should have been all along, a real community. And I had my insulated tarps folded neatly in the garage, ready for the next big delivery. No one was going to find me for them. No one was going to harass me about my business. I was free to live my life, run my company, and be a good neighbor without constantly looking over my shoulder for Patricia and her clipboard. Sometimes justice takes time. Sometimes the bullies win in the short term. But eventually, the truth comes out. Eventually, people who build things succeed over people who only tear things down. I finished my bourbon and went inside, looking forward to tomorrow and whatever new opportunities it would bring. The drama was over. The chapter with Patricia was closed. Life, finally, could just be life. And that was more than enough.